Oh, man, can't wait to watch a good one. Oh, my God, they scored already? That quick? We just got from it was a back-to-back. How are we ahead already? There's another one! That's how it felt watching this game. Literally, complete domination, surprise, and just, yeah, domination is probably the one word you can just use to just pencil in this win because, oh my God, it was such a good win. It was incredible to watch. It was scary, absurd. Actually, no, it wasn't scary at all. It was surprising. It was fun. I literally was hysterical half of the time, midway through the fourth, laughing my ass off because the Wild just wouldn't stop winning. They wouldn't give up anything to the Capitals. Well, they did give up one goal. I'll admit that. But still, 5-1. This is supposed to be a playoff team in the East. Oh my God. Let me regroup, because my God, what a win. What a win. So, while they're playing the Capitals tonight, the Capitals are in the final wild card spot in the East and comfortably ahead. They are way past now the Islanders, who are the closest competition, still like a 13-point lead ahead. So they're probably going to make the playoffs unless something catastrophically happens. Although Capitals fans, you might want to be a little bit, I don't know, worried, possibly. Because, yeesh, looking at this. Minnesota themselves have had points in 9 straight games. So, point streak is still up for the Wild. We still kept rolling that way, despite that bad loss to Pittsburgh that shouldn't have happened. But it's fine. It's fine. And it's Kaprizov against Ovechkin for the first time. Now, many of you are thinking, wait, no, the Capitals played the Wild back in Minnesota. That is true, but Kaprizov was injured. The reason why? It was because of, what was his name? Oh yeah, Trent Frederick. He nailed Kaprizov into the boards and he took him out for one game. That one game happened to be the one against the Capitals. And that Capitals team looked a hell of a lot better than this one did. And it's weird. It's weird to think about that because we barely won that game because the Caps threw one in their own net to help us out. But this game was anything but that. In net, it was Talbot versus Vanacek. So, the two pretty reliable goaltenders for the most part. Vanacek a little less reliable, and that would definitely prove in this game. But the main thing coming into this game, Washington hadn't played in 6 days. The last time they played was last Monday. That is the last time they've played. They had a big break. And so they have all that rest. They have that chance to get back into the groove of things. Meanwhile, Minnesota is coming off a back-to-back. They just played a really good game against Carolina, one of the best teams in the East. Now they got to play another playoff team in Washington. It's always a tough draw there. But literally 36 seconds in, at 19:24 in the first period, 36 seconds in, Eriksson Ek scores his 20th of the season, assisted by Greenway and Goligoski. The Grief line started this game, and the Grief line just went nuts in this game. They toyed with the Capitals. It wasn't even fair half of the time. But on this one, it was a long lead pass by Goligoski. He was waiting behind his net for a good chunk of time. Caps fans were booing him, but he's taking his time. Gets a long lead pass up into the center of the ice. Greenway tips it to lead it for Joel Eriksson Ek, who rushes by the defenseman and just goes 5-0 on Vanacek. The first shot of the game goes in, and it's already 1-0. So I just sat down trying to figure out, okay, well now I got to write all this and stuff like that, and I managed to get another stat in, which is that Minnesota is 13-0-2 this year versus the Metro Division. So we somewhat own that division pretty much. That would change to now 14-0-2 after this win. I didn't really account for that. But that was the only stat I was able to get in because they scored another one! And guess who it was? Tyson Jost. Finally, his effort has paid off and he gets on the score sheet. His 7th goal of the season, but his first with Minnesota. It comes at 18:20 with 18:23 left in the first period. It's assisted by Jonas Brodin, which gets his 23rd of the season, and Ryan Hartman is 26th of the season. Basically, Jost gets another lead pass from Jonas Brodin. He manages to slip by their defenseman. He comes in with a 2-on-1 with Kevin Fiala on the other side. He doesn't pass it over to Fiala. He says, no, I'm going to shoot this myself. And lo and behold, he tucks it under Vanacek's arm. It's 2-0. 2-0, not even 2 minutes in. The first 2 shots of the game have gone in for the Wild. So they are absolutely rolling right now. It was so fun to watch because I hadn't written my stuff down yet. I had to write all of this. I wrote right here. You get the goal scorer, you get what goal it was for them as far as the season goes. I try and get a timestamp, not how far in it was of the period, but what time it shows on the actual clock down there, just to make it easier for me. And then I show the assists, how many that was for each of them. And then I try and get a quick description to try and, make it easier so that nobody just says, oh, it's 2-0. How'd they score? I don't know. Wasn't paying attention. But yeah, 2-0, less than 2 minutes in for Minnesota. They are rolling. And literally this game basically played out just like that. It played out with Minnesota toying with its prey. The first period, pretty much domination by Minnesota. And Minnesota looked like a team that had been in that grind and had played a back-to-back. Washington really looked like a team that hadn't played in 6 days and looked lost. I'm not talking Pittsburgh without their star lost. I'm talking like teams that are out of the playoffs lost. Like that, they did not look like a playoff team whatsoever. They looked just, and even their stars, even Kuznetsov, Ovechkin, nobody seemed to figure it out. Nobody seemed to actually get in on the goal scoring. That was until later. But for the first 2 periods of the game, it was all Minnesota the entire time. There were multiple instances in the first and second period where it was Kevin Fiala and Tyson Jost who have suddenly, gotten a little bit more chemistry now because they've played a little bit more together. But it's the same lineup as last night because Merrill wasn't on this trip and Boldy didn't go tonight. They're going to test him in Nashville, but it's feeling doubtful, so it might be the same lineup again in Nashville, which is the game I'm really worried for. Not really. If the team plays like this, we'll be fine. But yeah, it was the same lineup, and this lineup just went off. Tyson Jost and Kevin Fiala just also have something going at the same time as Matt Boldy and Kevin Fiala. And hey, what were they saying? They always kept saying it when they brought in Marc-Andre Fleury. High tide raises ships. That's what it is. So high tide is definitely bringing up the Wild. Those trade deadline acquisitions are working. Jacob Middleton is doing incredible defensive plays. He did a lot of them in this game as well. Nick Delorier, he is rolling as far as a hitting machine and just pissing off the other team. He's great on the fourth line too. Tyson Jost, he's been a pest for everybody else trying to play against him, and he finally gets rewarded for his efforts with his 7th goal of the season, his first with the Minnesota Wild. So thank God for that. By the end of the first period, the shots were 10-6 in favor of Washington, which is weird because you'd think, well, if you dominated the period, you should lead in shots, right? That didn't really translate because most of the shots that Talbot had to face were pretty easy ones that were from bad angles or just ones that he just gloved out of the air and just made easy saves. Like it wasn't really tough stuff that Talbot had to face. It's not like he was terrible in this game. No, he just didn't have a lot to do. He was just kind of bored half of the time because Minnesota was pestering the shit out of Washington. But yeah, end of the first, it's a dominant first period by Minnesota, and Washington looked like a team that hadn't played in 6 days. And I said, but they'll be back because Washington usually always brings a tough game. So I kind of expected, okay, they have Ovi, they have Kuznetsov, they have Oshie. They're going to bring something in the second period. If they did, I didn't see it. I don't think anybody saw it because it literally just continued to be Minnesota the whole time. The Caps had a little bit of pressure early in the second period, but Minnesota was able to use great defense. And that's the key to why the Minnesota Wild have been winning these past few games. Great team defense. They have been blocking shots, putting sticks in the lanes. They are a tough defensive team to go against. Like they have gone against other tough defensive teams and they've made it a struggle. The top guys for other teams, Carolina was the same way, Washington tonight, they just shut them down. And it's mainly the GREEF line. They're just headlining the act. Everybody else is thrown in, but it's the GREEF line. Greenway, Eriksson Ek, and Foligno. That line is arguably one of the best hitting lines in all of hockey, if not one of the best. Because if you have to go against that line, they will wear you down. They are big, mean, physical, and they forecheck. They scare the shit out of people. That's what they do. And because of that, we are winning these games pretty comfortably. Even in the Carolina game, when it was 3-0 at one point, you seemed pretty comfortable then. They get one goal, and I didn't worry. I didn't worry in this game at all whatsoever. Obviously, because you score 2 that quickly, that kind of sucks the life out of the building. And this building was not as loud as Carolina. But there's a reason for that, because this team did not show up. At least Carolina somewhat showed up. This team did not. But yeah, they were frustrating the Capitals the whole time. And it was weird in the second period because it just turned into a defensive war. It seemed like nobody would get anything going. At 9:23 in the second period, there were 5 shots between the two teams. Halfway into the second period, there's only 5 shots. 4 of them were Washington's, and only 1 was Minnesota's. And yet they're still up 2-0. And as to add insult to injury, Joel Eriksson Ek gets another one. After breaking his career high, which was 19 earlier, he gets his 20th goal on that first one, that opening one. And then he gets another one right here, his 21st of the season at 6:53 to go in the second period. Assisted again by his line mates. Greenway, 13th of the season. Foligno, his 16th assist of the season. Basically, the GREEF line doing what it does best, forechecking, causing a turnover. Greenway basically throws it on the net. The puck is just sitting there squirming around. Vanacek can't grab it, and Ek just tucks it in. 3-0. That quick, because that GREEF line is so damn difficult to play against. It's infuriating for other teams to try and play against them. It's nuts. And there were a lot of penalties going against Washington this way, mainly because they were frustrated. Now, Minnesota didn't score on the power play, but I don't really think they needed to. Because the power play looked fine. They had chances, except for the last one, but that one was kind of weird circumstances. But for the majority of the power plays they had in this game, they were getting chances, they were trying to score, it just didn't go in. But that's fine if you're still up by 3 in the second period. And at the end of the second period, the shots were 16-11 still in favor of Washington. But compare that again to the first period, in which shots were 10-6 in favor of Washington. Literally, you expect on average about 10 shots a period. NHL teams should average about 30 shots a game. Okay? If you get less than 10 in a period, defense was suffocating. Absolutely suffocating. And that is what Minnesota's defense was in this game. Because they had Washington so damn frustrated. Ovechkin was frustrated. Kuznetsov was taking bad penalties. And it wasn't even fair. It didn't look fair half of the time. And especially in the third period. Because as soon as I get back to my seat in the third period, they score again. At the beginning of the period, they score again. Only 30 seconds in, Marcus Foligno gets his 20th of the season as well. He's like, I wanted one. Why not? Just go ahead. And who assists him? Lo and behold, the rest of the GREEF line. Greenway gets his 24th. Eriksson Ek gets his 19th. This line, I wrote here, is the best in hockey. It might be, because if nobody can take that line off, then yeah, that's pretty much what it is. This line is nuts. Absolutely nuts. And Evason's fine with either starting them at the beginning of the games. I think he's going to start him game 1 of the playoffs, because you set the tone early. You set it like that. You get some big hits from these guys. Oh my God! And if it's a home game and the GREEF line scores like that, how do you come back from that? How do you as a road team in a hostile environment? And this is assuming Minnesota gets home advantage. We still got to make sure that happens. But assuming we do, if the GREEF line scores like they did in this game, 30 seconds in, that's got to suck the life out of any team, at least for that period. For that period, it's just ridiculous. With the building rocking and everything, it was just nuts, because that GREEF line sucked the life out of the buildings. Well, at least this one. Carolina still had some ruckus, but it didn't seem to work. Didn't seem to work whatsoever. This line is just nuts. And with Foligno's goal, that now means that the Wild tied with the Blues and Panthers this season for the most 20-goal scorers on their team with 6. The Wild, the Panthers, and the Blues have the most 20-goal scorers in the NHL with 6. The Avs have 5. That is how nuts that stat is. And that's the only time that's happened in franchise history. This is a special team. And not the special teams that we know can be iffy at times, but this team itself, depending on how the playoffs go, I might say the best wild team ever. Because they have to live up to 2003 getting to the Western Conference Finals. They got there through a miracle run with not a lot of talent. This team has talent. This team looks dangerous. This team can make some noise in the playoffs. They can definitely make some noise. Okay? Frankly, if the Avs lose in the second round, it could happen. There is a real chance it could be Wild and Avalanche in the second round. That is a legit possibility. And I know a bunch of the people I know from home, because I lived in Colorado for 15 years. I lived in the midst of Avs Nation. I know they're going to be pissed. Because they still haven't gotten over 2014 or 2003, depending on who you ask. Oh, man, they're bitter. They're bitter. But make it out of the second round, and maybe we'll stop making fun of you. But yeah, after that fourth goal was scored, it just got ridiculous. It got offensive almost. Literally, like X-rated. This cannot be seen by the public. The GREEF line, not just the GREEF line, everybody. The entire Minnesota defense was just suffocating that Washington Capital team. They couldn't even get it out of their zone. Literally, when they were trying to set up in their zone, we'd still forecheck them, and they'd still lose the puck, and we'd still have zone time. It was just nuts. Literally, even the fourth line, I wrote it 1707, even the fourth line is harassing Washington. This is unfair. 14:21, I started laughing. Because I said it, I wrote, and I quote from myself, bruh, I'm laughing at how dominant this is. This is against a playoff team. Shots are only 16-16 throughout the entire game. Literally. It was 16-16 in the third period. You hadn't even gotten to 20 shots yet. This is less than average. The Wild didn't even shoot that much. They overpassed half of it. Like Lou Nanny was talking about that on the broadcast. He basically said there's a few moments where the Wild would overpass. Kaprizov would do it a couple times. Zuccarello did it a few times. But like, if they shot more often, this game would have looked a hell of a lot uglier than it was. This would have been like 7-0, 8-0. This would have been criminal if it kept going. But eventually, finally, after a horrible 2.5 periods, Washington finally gets a goal. They finally break through and won. And it's really the only bad play Minnesota made all night. Because, right here, I wrote at 11:26, Washington just got their first shot of the third. Yep. It took them, again, half of the period to get their first shot on goal. At 10:26, there was a 4-on-1 for Minnesota, but the puck barely bounced off Vanecek and went wide. But then, like I said, at 9:32, Hathaway gets his 11th of the season on a delayed penalty goal assisted by Ovechkin and Kuznetsov. Basically, Brodin trips somebody in their own end, so Vanecek comes out at the 6-on-5. They get it to Ovechkin at the point. He fires it. Puck bounces off of Hathaway to the 5-hole at Talbot. So it's a tough goal to give up, and I was really hoping that Talbot was going to get the shot because it looked like he was. It sucks, but it happens. And then the building finally had some life. They finally had something to cheer for, so it wasn't a complete murder on the ice. And then at 7:38, Zuccarello loses his skate blade in the zone. The puck is going back toward the Washington end, but as the cameras catch it behind the net, they see, of course, when you lose a skate blade, you look like Bambi out on the ice. Zuccarello's just trying to push off with no metal in his blade, so he has to try and find a way to get off. But luckily, Matt Dumba heads up play, lends out his stick. Zuccarello grabs it, and Dumba just tows him right back to the bench for him to get off. And it's a smart play because as soon as Dumba got him off of there, Washington came back the other way, so he wasn't out of position. It's perfect. And I can't wait to see that on NHL Weird because I watched those. 6:39, Washington, for some reason, really loved getting too many men penalties. I don't know why they really wanted to. They had one in the first, and they had one here. They just sucked at changing and nothing went right. As it got to the point where Everson could roll any line and then dominate, and Laviolette was literally switching up everything. And all of his lines were just crisscrossed just because he wanted to see if anything could work. And nothing did, pretty much. So, at 4:39 left in the third period, this is when Washington is trying their very best because they finally got a goal. They're trying to, gather momentum, bring the crowd back in. You still have time to score 3 goals. But they, again, give Minnesota a power play. So that's not good, and that was the too many men that they were talking about. But this power play for Minnesota was probably the ugliest one they had. Literally, this is one where they couldn't even link 2 passes together, and they just kept throwing it down the ice for icings. So it wasn't looking good, but Washington was forechecking. So that power play didn't work, but Talbot was still reliable even after giving up 1 goal. He was still fine. He was good. He was good. Only gave up 1, and that's fine. If you give up 1, you'll probably win it. In this case, you definitely won. But 3:34, Washington finally says, screw it, we're going to empty the net. We're down by 3. We need something big. And they don't get it because Nick Delorier gets an empty net goal with 2:45 left in the period. His 7th of the season, assisted by Spurgeon and Bukestad. Basically, Spurgeon wins the puck. He not really fire. He kind of catapults this one all the way into the Washington zone. Delorier gets on his horse and blasts into past the neutral zone. He just keeps rolling. He gets right past both Washington defenders and just tucks it in for the easy empty net goal. Eventually, 2:38, Hartman took a slashing penalty, which was the first one that, this is the first penalty that Minnesota took all night. So that was good. And because of the game eventually slowly winding to a slow death, Talbot would be 9-0-1 in his last 10 starts. That only loss was that stupid loss against the Penguins. So the Wild win, a dominating textbook defensive performance. And I said if we play like that, we win the cup. So let's keep rolling because the games are going to get tougher. The shots in this game at the end, Washington had 26 shots. Minnesota had 19. 5 goals on 19 shots. I wouldn't blame that entirely on Vanacek. I would blame that on terrible defense. Literally, there were so many chances that the defense for Washington just kind of let them walk by. It was too easy. So it's a good win to have. It's a good dominating performance by the GREEF line, but I just know it is going to get tougher because I know Washington is not really a threat to anybody. Not in the East, not in the West either. It's just not how it's going to look. So the Wild moved to 43-20-5 with the record of 91 points. We are still second in the Central. And I don't know how many points we are ahead of St. Louis. I want to say 4, but we play them at one point. And we also play Nashville Tuesday at 8 Eastern. We play at Nashville. That will be a tough one. Okay, that game will be tough. We get a break. We get a day. It's not a back-to-back. We get a break for the day. But this is a great way to start out the road trip. 2 wins against 2 Eastern Conference playoff teams. Now we get to play the guys we know. The Predators, who have had our number this year. If we can win in their building, that is a huge confidence boost. Especially since we know we're going to be facing one of the 2 playoff teams we're going to play in these next 2 games. Either it's St. Louis or it's Nashville. One of those 2. Those 2 are still jockeying for position for 3rd in the Central because I don't think any of them want to play Calgary because they're rolling. And I don't think any of them want to play Colorado either. So they are going to be tough games to play. But like I said, if we play like we did tonight, we'll be fine. So anyways, that's all from me. Like, subscribe. I'm going to keep watching the Wild through the rest of the season because this is too much fun not to watch. Too much fun. And as always, I will talk to you later. See ya.